that's the International Migration Organization's Goodwill Ambassador there, Kofi Kinata, speaking to the subject, what we're going to talk about. There are over 258 million migrants around the world living outside their country of birth. This figure is expected to grow for a number of reasons, including population growth, increasing connectivity, trade, rising inequality, demographic imbalances, and climate change, amongst many others. Movement from Ghana to other parts of the world has grown substantially in recent times too, though many of them either end up losing their lives trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea or live in deplorable conditions in Libya, suffering from human rights abuses at the hands of smugglers and in detention centers. So last week, over 160 world leaders and representatives of governments met in Marrakesh, Morocco, to adopt the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, the first ever UN global agreement on a common approach on dealing with international migration in all its dimensions. So on International Migrants Day today, we want to spend some time with Sylvia Lopez-Ekra, Chief of Mission, International Organization for Migration, Ghana. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Kofi Kinata is still your Goodwill Ambassador?
Yes.
Okay.
He was appointed last year because we wanted to spread the safe migration message in a way that will really resonate with the youth, because that's our main target. The people who engage in dangerous, irregular migration are mainly young people, and we wanted them to hear a message in a way that is packaged, that would really have meaning for them and resonate with them.
So did it make a difference?
We hope so, we think so. I think more and more young people are aware that irregular migration is dangerous. Unfortunately, we continue to see some of them making those dangerous choices. And that is the reason why International Migrants Day is an important moment for us to reflect and see how we can further push this conversation around why is our youth making those choices, and engage the youth themselves, because we shouldn't have something for the youth without the youth. We want to make sure that they're part of it.
Absolutely. So help us understand where some Ghanaians are risking their lives traveling to these days.
So I think Ghanaians have always been very mobile. There is an interest that has been a long-standing interest in traveling, and you can find Ghanaians in many places around the world and on every continent. What we are seeing in the more recent past are trends of migration that is not happening in an environment that can be conducive of positive results for those migrants. So irregular migration is one of them, and we've seen in the recent past Ghanaians going through Burkina Faso, then from Burkina Faso they go into Niger, Agadez, and from there they go into Libya. Ghanaians were going to Libya in the past to work, but now with the situation in Libya, it has become increasingly dangerous. And I'm sure you remember the CNN video last year that was showing migrants in detention centers, migrants being sold or in slave-like situations. And unfortunately, it has affected really most of the countries in our sub-region, including Ghana.
You know, we've been talking about the Libyan situation. Is it the way we're packaging the message and sending it to our people? That's because one should be afraid of going to Libya these days. But no, we still want to cross through Libya. Italy is not safe either. I mean, it's not such a friendly place to even, stop and continue your journey. But people still want to do it. So is it the type of message or the packaging? What are we not doing right?
I think it's a mix of a lot of reasons. And because it's a mixed bag of factors, that's also why it's so difficult to address it. And we really have to take our time and go deeper and try and understand what are the different layers of things that we have to address to make a significant impact. So in the case of Ghana, I think the social status is an important factor. When you go into communities, there is a good social status that comes with migration. If you have migrated or if you have a migrant in your family, it brings you social prestige. We can see, and it's very visible, you can see houses, you can see cars, you can see so many things that are appealing to the youth. Then the youth will also tell you, I don't know how to get a decent living here. And when you're trying to go deeper into that, recently I was trying to have a dialogue on social media with some youth and saying agriculture is one of the sectors that can employ the youth and that can create opportunities of livelihood for you, but we see that you are not necessarily that attracted to agriculture these days. And I was asking them why. And they would say, because we don't have capital, because we don't have the land, we don't know where to start, we don't know how to do it, we don't know about supply chains, we don't have training. So there is that employment issue. And if you look at the demographics of Ghana, I think it's a country with a big proportion of youth, which is a great thing that we can capitalize on for development. But if you have expectations for employment for this youth that are not met, if you have underemployment, informal employment, or unemployment, it creates a driving force for migration. It attracts them. And then the youth, I think everywhere in the world, the youth is the same. They believe that they are invincible. They believe that they can make it. And others may have died, but maybe for me it will be different. And I see those young people who will tell you, I have a 50-50% chance of making it. Let me try. And I think this is where we have to really talk to them and the families. How is it possible that a family will find money to fund a migration journey, but will not find that money to help a young person develop a small business? So at the societal level as well, I think there is some deeper thinking that we have to do. What are the signals that we are giving to our youth? What is it that we are telling them in terms of how they should be building their future?
You know, it's almost as if once you're going out there, you can't fail. But if we were to give you that capital here, there's a possibility that you will fail and our money would go waste. But there's a significant difference also between migrants and refugees.
Yes.
So just help us clear that, and let's talk about the people in our country as well that we're hosting.
Okay. I think very often refugees are migrants, because migrants are people that are who are outside of their countries of origin, countries of birth. But refugees have a special status, and actually the Global Compact on Refugees has been adopted as well this week. Refugees are, they have international protection because they are fleeing from persecution and from other things that they need to be protected from. In the categories of migrants as well, you have different types of migrants. We've been talking a lot about irregular migration recently, for good reasons, because it is of big concern to all of us. And irregular migrants are people who want to enter a country that is not their own, but they don't have the legal documents to do that. And very often when we're talking about legal documents, we're talking about a passport and a valid visa. And irregular migrants often don't have a valid visa, or they went with a valid visa and that visa has expired. But we have huge number. You were giving us some numbers at the beginning of the conversation. All those are not irregular migrants. You have a large number of migrants in the world that are doing very well. You have a large proportion that are realizing their dreams, that are contributing to the development of their countries of origin and of destination. And I think we also have to remember that, and we have to celebrate that on International Migrants Day as well. But why we putting the emphasis on the dignity piece, on the human rights piece this year, is because we continue to see people die on the Mediterranean Sea. And my Director General in his message today was saying this is a shame on all of us. How can we still have more than 2,000 people die on the Mediterranean Sea alone every year for the past 5 years? And that's also why the Global Compact on Migration that was adopted in Marrakesh last Monday, it's so important, because different countries in the world have different views and different opinions about how migration should be managed. But we had the overwhelming majority of the UN member states coming together, 164 member states in total, saying we will not let migration divide us. We want to work together. We want to make sure that we have the tools to to ensure that migration is a tool for development. And now migration is in the Sustainable Development Goals. So it is an engine for development if it is well managed. If it's not well managed.
So how do we do that when somebody's thinking about building a wall, for instance? You know, there are people who see migration negatively. And I guess that's why we are so familiar with the negative stories.
I think a lot of the things that we see about migration, and it's not all countries have signed the compact, and it's a non-binding agreement. It is about realizing a vision together. And some countries have decided for now not to join. And I think a lot of it comes from a place of fear. Because if we are discussing migration based on feelings, based on very superficial impressions that we have, that's where the xenophobia can come and create very difficult things then to sort out later. We need to be speaking from evidence, and that's why we need data. We know that migrants are contributing to the economies where they are, that they are contributing more than what they receive. Migrants are building countries around the world, so we don't need walls. I think that's my very short answer to that. We don't need walls. And with the Global Compact, countries in the world are saying we want to be together. And that was a beautiful message that was given last week. And it was an historical step in the right direction.
But what we want to see is it reflecting on the ground. But I want us to, because we're in Ghana, let's talk about how we're helping integrate the people who are here. So is that something that the IOM also monitors?
So IOM is of course very actively involved throughout the whole spectrum of migration. So when it comes to irregular migration, we want to stop young people from living in the first place. And that's why we have our ambassador. We're doing community-based awareness in various areas. We have a center that we have opened with Ghana Immigration Service in Sunyani. We have one in Accra, and they will be with us at the Kotobabi Wembley today. We're organizing a football tournament to mobilize the youth. The Minister for Inner City and Zongo Development will be with us. The Chief Imam will be with us, so that the message is really coming from different voices in
Just
society.
before you continue, tell us why Sunyani is significant.
It actually, thank you for asking this question, because in the past we've been talking about the Brong-Ahafo region quite a lot. When I came to Ghana 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, when we were talking about irregular migration, we had the Greater Accra region and we had the Brong-Ahafo region. Later on, we had to add the Ashanti region on the map. Most recently, Western region, and now we have the Northern region as well.
Wow.
These are 5 regions in Ghana that are impacted by irregular migration. And we know that because the people that we return, mainly from Libya, this is where they go. So 5 out of 10 regions, meaning that we really have to work across the country, and we have to work within resources that we have, which is also sometimes a challenge. We have to work with big number of returns, because we are getting very close to 1,000 returnees, mainly from Libya. I think we are at 970. And when these returnees come back, we have to make sure that the return is sustainable, and they come back safely and with dignity. And when they're in their communities of origin, and we all know it is very difficult for a migrant to take the decision to come back home empty-handed. People will be asking you, you've gone, what have you brought? You didn't succeed, why? So on a psychological level already for the migrant, it is difficult. So we want to make that transition as smooth and as easy as possible for the migrants, so that they don't decide to re-migrate, which can happen. So that comes through the counseling. It comes with having your basic needs met immediately upon arrival, training, and then the possibility to start a livelihood. What we're doing now is that we are encouraging migrants to come together to open micro enterprises instead of having individual ones, because the numbers are big, but also because those micro enterprises will be more resilient if they are a little bit larger. So in the spirit of cooperatives. So reintegration is something that we need to do as a whole of government, and we're working with the government of Ghana, we're working with civil society, extremely important, on the ground, to make sure that we are using also the networks that are already existing, the facilities that are already existing.
Do you agree to them coming back? I mean, because you have shared with me how you're against deportation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So all the migrants that IOM returns are returning voluntarily. That means that they've given their consent after us explaining thoroughly what the process will be and what they can expect on arrival. And until the last minute, they can change their mind. When we are boarding planes for Libya, we have migrants who say, I don't want to go, I'm changing my mind. And as I was saying, it's a difficult decision to take because you went and in a way you failed. And we have to tell migrants it's not failure, you tried something. Life is experience. But at the very last minute, some migrants may decide not to board that plane, and that is fine. Okay. So all our returns are voluntary, and we are working with our member states to advocate against deportation, because I think...
is it a fight that you can win? Because there are individuals, you know, sovereign states, they've got their own rules and regulations.
Absolutely, and every member state can decide for themselves. But what we're providing are facts and evidence and information. It is expensive to deport people because you have to have all the security network around it. Sometimes you will charter a special flight. The migrants may come back and not stay. So we have a lot of evidence that deportation is not as, and first of all, it's against the human rights that we're promoting if it's not done in a certain way. And I think a lot of the member states are not deporting that much. I think it's very often done when there are other things like a criminal background. So we also have a lot of misinformation about deportations, but when it does happen, IOM is not involved because that's something we reject.
Okay. So let's talk about today. What's going to happen? Just the final lap of the conversation. What's happening today, International Migrants Day?
So today, International Migrants Day, celebrated, commemorating all over the world. Every country is having different ways of doing that. In Ghana, we said, this is for the youth. This is where we want our message to be heard. And we want to go where they are. That's why we're going to the Kotobabi Wembley. Okay. We wanted to target communities around Accra where we know that young people are interested in migration and irregular migration. And you can hear, I mean, you go into Nima and to other places and you will see that young people are definitely interested in migrating regularly. So we have invited football teams from Nima, Accra Newtown, Medina and Mamobi. They will be playing football. We know how the youth in Ghana loves football, and I think Ghana as a country loves football. So we thought it was a good way to rally around this message, and we'll give them a platform to have fun, but at the same time to discuss very important issues. So they will hear the truth about what happens in the desert. They will hear the truth about what happens in the sea. I think for a young person, they need to understand if you are hiding behind a truck and you are moving among vehicles, if you fall, you will die. If you are in the desert, people are dying of thirst, of starvation, of sickness. They are attacked by bandits. You go into the desert and there are some places, it is very well documented, you will find those bones. And these are bones of migrants who have died there. So their life is too precious for us not to be doing as much as we can for the message to go out.
Thank you, Sylvia, for spending a bit of your Migrants Day with us today on the Ian Show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Stay with us. We have one more thing coming up, which is Show Business, Becky, and it's brought to us by Awake Purified Drinking Water.